The title of this video is no joke. It really is time to lock in. I've been saying for multiple weeks that something is brewing, and I feel that the catalyst for us to explode is right around the corner. So close that if you are sidelined right now, you run a serious risk of missing out on some crazy pumps. If you're here right now, you're already ahead of 90% of people. I'll let our boy Donald explain how you're going to be feeling very soon.
We're going to win so much, you may even get tired of winning, and you'll say, please, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore. Mr. President, it's too much. And I'll say, no, it isn't. We have to keep winning. We have to win more.
What's up, people? I hope you're all doing well. Another market update video. We've had a huge week in the geoeconomic and geopolitical landscapes, and we're seeing that reflected across all asset classes. We'll begin by covering Bitcoin, look at some fundamental analysis, we'll cover stocks and some interesting data I stumbled across, look at Ethereum and our alts, and I'll give my thoughts on what's to come. As always, whilst I am a financial advisor, none of this is financial advice. Beginning as we always do with Bitcoin, damn, the last week has really impressed me. We'll cover the huge tariff news and reactions in more detail in a second, but factoring all of that in, the strength we have seen from Bitcoin has been extraordinary. We started off the week strong and rose as high as 88k again, but the resistance at these levels is proving to be quite strong for the time being. Then, of course, we had the tariff announcements. Given what we know about Bitcoin in the past, how it's still a risk asset, and of course all of crypto is still extremely risky, we saw what's going on in the stock markets. For us to only drop to 81k and bounce strongly off of that level, I gotta say, it's very surprising. You would have thought that this kind of news would take us to the previous lows of 76k and drop below even. We've seen how volatile Bitcoin can be, and this is exactly the kind of event that would take us to 70k and no one would really question it. Instead, the resilience has been great to see. You guys know my invalidation thesis by now. I said if I see us drop below 70k and consolidate below, I will be concerned for this cycle, and at best we could put in a lower high as opposed to higher highs. But for now, the price action does not concern me. When we look on the higher timeframes, we are respecting the 50-week moving average quite nicely. We've bounced off this support a few times already this cycle, so as long as we remain above, I think we're doing well. However, should we begin to drop and close candles below the line, that's a warning shot, and again, we must rethink our outlook on this cycle. This then begs the question, is the bottom in? Well, when you see the strength in these times of extreme uncertainty, it's very possible to hypothesize that March 10th was the bottom for Bitcoin. I am seeing an increasing amount of news articles, and I have seen over the last few weeks, fear-mongering that 65k is a key level and we're going to drop there regardless. When you see this coming from news sources in mass, to me, that's a signal that we're probably not going to drop that low. And in the last few weeks, we have had, in my opinion anyway, a lot more bearish news than bullish. Again, another signal that the bottom could be in. I'm just going off what I've seen so far. Our boy Donald could have other plans. Any macro or political changes is difficult for us to account for, but that's why we have to discuss both sides. Objective analysis always. Quick break to ask, why are you not part of the best free community in crypto? Join over 1,000 people determined to make money and help each other out. Sign up to the email newsletter too, it's all free, you've got no excuse, link down below. So moving on to the fundamentals this week, of course I have to mention the tariffs. This ain't a political channel and I'm not sure how interested you guys would be in my opinion on this anyway, so I'll keep it brief. But I really don't think this is going to be that bad. We've seen the knee-jerk reaction from people and countries, calling it a dumb move, calling Trump stupid, saying he's going to accelerate the recession and collapse the US economy. All bullshit in my opinion. I'm not American, but I am an economist and can see the strategy here. Since Trump won the election, I have been saying he wants a weak dollar, and this is an extreme way to go about it, but it's working. The markets are tanking, there is pressure being placed on the Fed to cut the rates, which will further weaken the dollar and make risk assets more enticing. The tariffs will reduce the trade deficit America is currently in, encouraging Americans to buy American, encourage the large corporations to manufacture in America, which creates more jobs, boosting the economy, etc, etc. Look, as an economist, you can see the strategy here. To summarize it in its basic form, short-term pain for mid to long-term gain. As for the rest of the world, initially again it looks pretty bad, but I reckon behind closed doors a lot of these nations will be on the phone to the US trying to negotiate the terms and come to a more agreeable arrangement. Let's not underestimate the negotiating power the US has, the largest economy in the world. We have to be patient and see what pans out over the next few weeks. China are large enough on their own that they can retaliate and not feel the effects too much, but most countries aren't. It could turn into a concentrated trade war between the US and China, maybe the EU too. Also, remember Trump postponed the tariffs once already. He could do so again and make further changes. We are kinda at his mercy right now. The reaction of the tariffs in the markets is as you expect. The S&P 500 is having its worst day since 2020, dropping 3-4%, down around 10% in a week. Crypto is supposed to be correlated to this, being a risk asset which is further along the risk curve, but so far we've held up well. This is kinda reminiscent of March 2020, where we dropped, but it provided an excellent buy opportunity. I came across this data on X, which I found interesting. After 2 days of consecutive 4.5% declines, look at the reaction in this index. 1 month onwards, we have strong recoveries. In 2020, after 6 months, we were up 35%, and the average after 6 months is 17.5%. If this happens again, take a guess at what you think the price of Bitcoin will be. The dollar's getting closer and closer to the risk on region, albeit not in the economic uncertainty we're in. If the markets can recover over the next few weeks and the dollar remains around this level, all we need is the rate cuts to begin and we can start to see the reaction in our investments. A $5 trillion loss in the stock markets is pretty crazy though, double of the entire crypto sector. Speaking of rate cuts, more and more are being priced in for this year. I guess it's to be expected. The Fed are seeing the weakening market performance and know they have to act. Trueflation has us at 1.22% apparently, still significantly below Fed expectations, but let's see the CPI data later this month. This year started off with just 1 rate cut being predicted in June, but that quickly increased to 2, which became 3, and now there's a chance of 5 rate cuts this year, which is absolutely staggering. I don't think we'll get 5, but I'm more concerned with when will they do it. With the performances and reactions from the tariffs, maybe they need to act sooner rather than later and begin the changing of policy in May. Let's quickly take a look at this chart depicting the performance of Bitcoin versus the S&P 500. You can see the correlation between the two assets is pretty clear, even though Bitcoin is supposedly further along the risk curve. But I mean, look at the recent sell-off. If the lines weren't labelled, most people would believe the blue line to be the riskier scam asset and the orange to be the strongest companies in America. Look how times are changing. Although with our luck, Bitcoin could just delay its drop and we could be in for a nasty surprise. But at initial glances, it's nice to see. As I mentioned earlier, I keep seeing these same figures mentioned on socials and in news articles. 65k, 70k, 65k, 70k. Whilst I can see on the charts, the more I see these figures mentioned, the more I don't think we're going to drop that low. If everyone's expecting this outcome and the FUDing and fear mongering is kicking in, I think the market manipulators will have other plans. Michael Saylor is of course still buying. I'm not sure if it would benefit him if Bitcoin price falls that low. It's not retail, but we've got the big whales, countries, institutes playing the game now, and they can artificially keep the price where they want, I'm sure. That's why Bitcoin was so stagnant last year for months after the ETF announcement and constant inflows, before finally erupting towards the end of the year. And that could be what's happening with Ethereum. Piss poor performance, but the big players with the ETFs aren't just going to let this asset crash and burn. Painful times, yes, but when they're ready, I think they'll let it off just like they did with Bitcoin. It did well not to react too much to the tariffs though, so far anyway. Although the ETH BTC strength is dropping below December 2020 levels, that's a bit concerning. We do need a recovery in this area ASAP. I don't think I need to go too in depth into altcoins. I'm not trying to depress you guys further. Majority of them aren't going to be performing well when Ethereum is subdued like this. Even Solana, which can be used as a risk metric for crypto, is performing really poorly. So naturally, your alts will be looking shit. But it ain't all doom and gloom. My advice is still the same this week. Don't check your portfolio if you can't handle it. I do really think we are close to a reversal. I predicted the end of March initially, and we did bounce back strongly, but a sustained reversal cannot be expected with the tariff drama. However, with rising liquidity, with the potential for rate cuts, with the Fed pressure to switch tactics to promote growth, the next few weeks/months will be very exciting indeed. April, May, June, I think we've got a 3-month stretch here where we could and should see some green. And whilst your coins are down, I keep saying the strongest will recover. A prime example that I saw in the last week was Devi. It pumped 50% in the worst of conditions. It makes you wonder what's going to happen when we do fully reverse. The best coins in the best narratives with the best pumpermentals will bounce hard and make new highs, some of which aren't even needed because it's over 10x to previous levels anyway. I have optimism and faith around this. It also hammers home one of my constant ideologies, cash is king. I've been hounding my community, don't be 100% exposed to the market. Always keep dry powder on the side, so when we are in times like this, you can still strategize, look for opportunities. Know that even if you made some poor investments, you can eradicate all of that negativity by making some good ones. I'm going to be bringing some juicy projects to the channel very soon, any emerging low caps or narratives that I think we should keep an eye on. If you're interested in that, please feel free to subscribe, join the community, the link is down in the description, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Take care.